Welcome to Around the World on 8 Plates. In this series, we're going to visit different countries and introduce these countries to you by providing information regarding itinerary. We're also going to teach you how to cook signature dishes from these countries and interview locals from these countries so that you can have a better understanding of what these countries are all about. So join me, your host Jojo Tan, as we go around the world on 8 Plates. Presented to you by National Taiwan Normal University Common Core Education Committee Foreign Language Education Division. So far this season, we have traveled to the following countries: Latvia, Kenya, the Seychelles, Bahrain, Thailand, Kiribati. For the 7th country, we are going to another place. Which country is it? Here is a clue for you.
Hannah, what you say?
What?
What you say? Oh, USA, what you say?
Okay.
Doesn't that sound like the name of a country? Oh, that reminds me. Today, we are going to the country of... What you say?
Today, we are going to the USA. We are traveling to San Francisco. After landing at San Francisco Airport, what are some of the places you can visit? Let's start with the ferry building. What is it all about? So in front of me is the ferry building. It used to be a ferry building. Now it's not a ferry building anymore because there's a bridge that connects San Francisco to Oakland. So now they have turned that ferry building into sort of a mall.
And inside the building, you can have lots of food, lots of cuisines from different countries. Peru, India, the Philippines, where we just had some sinigang flavored chicken wings. In front of the building, there's a promenade where you can exercise or just enjoy the cityscape. Outside, you can also take photos in front of Bay Bridge. After the ferry building, make your way to Pier 39. One innovative way to get there is to take Waymo. It's just like Uber without a driver. Waymo. It's way more convenient for you.
Now, what's so special about Pier 39?
Hello everyone, we are at Pier 39 right now. Pier 39. See? So Pier 39 is not Pier 29, and it's not Pier 49, and it's not Apple 39, it's Pier 39. So what is it famous for? So it's famous for being a vantage point for you to take a look at all the views. So for example, over there, you can see Bay Bridge, and then here there's some shops, and then over there, you look at that, that's Alcatraz. And then after Alcatraz, when something really, really bad happens, that's what happens. Devastation.
Enough with the corny jokes. There are lots of shops and restaurants at Pier 39. Be sure to try their funnel cake. Just make sure you don't eat too much. If not, you will gain a lot of weight. After the funnel cake, check out the sea lions and the seagulls in the area. There is an interdependent relationship between the animals and the tourists there. The animals provide entertainment, whereas the tourists give them food. Next, make your way to San Francisco State University. A great choice if you want to study abroad. They offer lots of courses in humanities and in social sciences, and their English program is well known around the world. Now back to some more sightseeing. A trip to San Francisco won't be complete without visiting the Golden Gate Bridge. Go to 4 Point for a wonderful view of the bridge. Built in 1937, the bridge set the world record for the longest bridge with the tallest towers in the USA. What else do we know?
Alright, so over there is what they call Fort Lee. It's interesting to see before the bridge was constructed, Fort has already been there.
It's worth spending 2 to 3 hours learning more about the history of the fort and taking in the beautiful view. Another place where you can view the Golden Gate Bridge is at Presidio Tunnel Tops. Here are some of our photos. Next, make your way to Alamo Square. Not only can you take in the beautiful view of San Francisco, but there are some beautiful houses near a park called the Painted Ladies, where you can learn about San Francisco's architecture. From architecture, now let's talk about art and go to the Palace of Fine Arts. When I went there, I kept wondering why it's called a palace and not a museum. This is just my guess.
Now why it's called the Palace of Fine Arts. You know, like usually castles, there's a moat in front of the castle. So this palace, there's like unveils. So I think that's why it's called a palace. The Palace of Fine Arts.
Okay.
From my opinion, let's talk about some historical facts about this place.
This place was actually built back in 1916. So that's more than 100 years ago, and yet it's still being used for lots of events, such as, I guess there's a prom.
Let's take a few moments to enjoy the scenic views of this beautiful work of art. All that sightseeing has made me hungry. You may also head out to Burlingame to try out different kinds of cuisine. Have a coffee.
People go to Starbucks and then order something, then give them their name, and then they make a mistake. So my friend's name is Hannah, and the name on this cup says Anna.
And just enjoy a lazy Sunday afternoon.
Look at this. What's this? It's a phone. Hello? Hello? They have a dog with water. So I guess it's a very pet-friendly.
Before going to Burlingame, go down the winding Lombard Street for a fun way to cap off your trip in San Francisco and check out the other areas such as Chinatown, Haight, the place where the hippie movement started, Mission, North Beach, and Castro, one of the biggest areas for members of the LGBTQ+ community. It's history time as we present a short timeline of the history of San Francisco's LGBTQ movement. Let's start with the 1950s. Early activism. The first lesbian and political rights group was started. Then, in the 1960s, building momentum because the Council on Religion and the Homosexual is formed to encourage discussion between those in the LGBTQ community and those belonging to different churches. The 1970s, the rise of the movement. In 1972, Harvey Milk is elected to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, becoming one of the first openly gay elected officials. The 1980s was marked by challenges and advances. The San Francisco General Hospital opens the world's first clinic dedicated to AIDS. The 1990s. This decade is marked by expanding rights. In 1996, the Domestic Partnership Benefits and Obligations Act is enacted. The 2000s were marked by marriage equality. The California Supreme Court legalizes same-sex marriage, but Preposition 8 later temporarily bans it again. Now, the 2010s. It was marked by major legal victories. The Circuit Court of Appeals rules that Proposition 8 is against the law. Finally, in the 2020s, this decade is marked by continuing the fight. In 2020, San Francisco becomes the first US city to celebrate Transgender History Month. Therefore, we can definitely say that LGBTQ members in San Francisco have been steadily accepted over the decades. Hey, have you noticed something? Well, during my 4 or 5 day trip, I have experienced hail, California sunshine, rain, all kinds of weather. This is what makes San Francisco unique, as it has lots of microclimates. It's geography time.
This is a perfect example of how San Francisco has different climates, what they call mini climates. Behind me is San Francisco, but let's start with what's in front of me. So behind the camera, there's actually a hill, and the hill is interesting because fog comes down and the hill actually blocks the fog. So usually the temperature there and the temperature there, the difference can be up to like 10 degrees.
To conclude, San Francisco truly is a diverse city. It's got diversity in terms of climate, communities, and tourist spots. No wonder San Francisco is one of the most visited cities in the United States. To learn more, check out the next part of this video in the form of a postcard. To learn more, read this country profile in the form of a postcard. We've learned all about the country, it's time to start cooking. Today, we are going to cook chocolate chip waffles. Here is a list of ingredients. You'll need 2 cups of waffle mix, 1 teaspoon of salt, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, 2 eggs, 1.5 cups of milk, some butter, some chocolate chip cookies, as well as maple syrup. Now let's go to step 1. Prepare the batter. So you mix the waffle mix with the milk and other ingredients. The second step is you have to crush some chocolate chip cookies. This will enhance the flavor of the chocolate chip in the waffle. Step 3. Pour the batter into the waffle maker. Now step 4, please make sure that you spread the batter evenly so that all the waffles cook at the same time. Now for the next step, you pour the chocolate chip cookies, the crushed chocolate chip cookies onto the batter. Now finally, once the waffles have been cooked, serve on a plate and pour or drizzle some maple syrup on top. And there you have it, the very simple and short recipe for chocolate chip waffles. Now, in case you need it, here is a written recipe for today's signature dish. For the next part of today's video, you're going to listen to an interview with a local. Now let's go to the final part of today's video. So for this episode, we're going to have 2 guests and you're the first one.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, could you introduce yourself?
Of course. Well, first, thank you for inviting me to speak today. I really appreciate it. My name is Robert Coles, and I'm an associate professor of TESOL at San Francisco State University.
How long have you lived in San Francisco?
Well, I've lived here since January 1st of 2016.
Okay.
Before that, I lived in Canada for about 8 years while I was doing my PhD.
Okay, so January 1st, like you had to move to San Francisco on New Year's Day?
I did. And Toronto was very cold that January 1st. So when I came here, the weather was wonderful. It was warm. So it was a great way to start off a new year.
Was it warm or warm-ish?
Well, that's a good question. It depends on how you define warm and warmish. It was probably, so San Francisco, I mean, one of the things I really like about the city is that the weather is always somewhere between 15 and 20 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
So there isn't a lot of fluctuation, right?
Okay.
It doesn't get too cold and it doesn't get too hot.
Yes.
It was probably maybe January 1st, could have been somewhere between 10 and 15, somewhere in there, perhaps.
Okay.
Could have been.
And even in the summer, it doesn't go beyond 15 degrees.
It can. It
Okay.
can. So our real summer is
Yes.
in August. So August and September tends to be the warmest months in San
Okay.
Francisco. So it could be 20, maybe it could go up to 25, but that's rare. That's
Okay.
highly unusual, right? Um, and it has to do with, we're a city that's between the ocean and this enormous bay called the San Francisco Bay.
Yep.
And we're on a little peninsula, right? So we get a lot of cold air that comes down from Canada on
Yes.
the Pacific Ocean
Right.
side, and then we're between these two bodies of water, so it keeps the temperature very mild, and then we get a lot of fog that rolls in the afternoon, and
Yep.
that cools down the temperatures. So it does. The temperatures are quite dramatic,
Yep.
and so in the city, depending on which neighborhood you live in, the temperatures will vary as well. So I'm in a neighborhood called North Beach,
Yes.
which is right by the bay and by the port of San Francisco. And so often the weather is quite warm during the day, never really hot, but it's pleasant and there's always sunshine. However, if you go over to San Francisco State University, where I work and where you gave your paper,
Yep.
it can often be quite foggy during the day because it faces the Pacific Ocean and the temperatures can be quite milder over there. So it really depends where you are. So it's a really, the city is a microcosm, I
Right.
would
And
say.
so I'm pretty sure like you have to bring a jacket to work.
Oh, of course. Everybody, one thing they'll tell you if you come to San Francisco is that you have to layer. And what they
Okay.
mean by layer is that you need to come with different layers of clothing. So, as
Mhm.
example, you might wear a shirt
Yep.
and then you may have a little jacket over that.
Right.
Sometimes in the winter, you may want to wear a scarf.
Yeah.
And then you just take things on or off, or you have a sweater and you take that off. It gets too hot and then put it back on in the evening. So, that's kind of how people function here.
I have it's not a personal question, but like what is your preference? Do you put all your jackets in the car and leave them there? Or,
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds more convenient, right?
It does. It does. No. The only thing I keep in my car are my tango shoes. So I take
Oh,
tango classes. I
oh,
take
nice.
I belong to a queer tango group, and so I keep my tango shoes in my car,
Uh-huh.
um, so I can wear them in class, right? But all my jackets, my heavy coats are all in my closet here.
Okay, wow. Okay, very organized.
I try to be. I try.
And so apart from the weather, like what are some of the things that you like about San Francisco? Maybe name
Well,
one.
yeah, of course. I mean, there's lots of things. One, it's a beautiful city. So, as I was saying, the topography, it's situated between the ocean and the bay. There's lots of hills that make San Francisco very famous, right?
Yep.
And it's a city of views. So, anywhere you look, in my opinion, you're
Yes.
going to get a beautiful view either of the ocean, of the hills, or very famous landmarks. Like near my house in North Beach, Telegraph Hill, there is something called Coit Tower.
Okay.
There's also in the opposite direction, there's the Golden Gate Bridge, there's a Bay Bridge, there's famous buildings downtown. So there's always something beautiful to see and to look at.
Yes.
We also have very famous Victorian architecture.
Okay.
Unlike a lot of unlike a lot of other American cities, we have a particular kind of architecture that's unique to San Francisco.
Yep.
And these are Victorian homes
Mhm.
that were built anywhere between, I would say, 1860s to around 1900, and people often paint them in these really vibrant colors, so it adds to the character
Mhm.
uh, city in many wonderful ways, I think. So the beauty of that I enjoy. The
Yep.
weather, we talked about the weather. I like the
Right.
weather. I don't like things that are really cold, although I did live in Canada.
Uh-huh.
That took a while to get used to. Really cold or super, super hot. So
Yes.
I like this nice, pleasant in between space.
Yeah.
San Francisco also has some beautiful neighborhoods.
Okay.
These neighborhoods are interesting because they all have a different character or history. Different people settled in different neighborhoods, and different neighborhoods also have different languages. So,
Yeah.
for example, in my neighborhood is called North Beach, and it's the old Italian neighborhood.
Okay.
And many of those Italian families have since left, right?
Mhm.
But there are a lot of Italian place names and restaurants and cafes and Italian flags. So it's still in the culture. There's also an Italian bookstore. And
Wow.
right across Columbus Avenue, which goes through North Beach, is Chinatown.
Right.
You'll have a lot of Chinese immigrants, also immigrants from Taiwan, as well as Hong Kong. So
Yep.
you'll hear Mandarin and Cantonese. And so linguistically, these neighborhoods can be quite different. They have a very different history to them. And of course, the food in the neighborhoods will vary
Yes.
depending on the community living there. And
Mhm.
that's very special. And you don't always get that in every city.
Yep.
That's one thing that makes San Francisco very charming for me and very attractive for me. Well, I just wanted to say two other things. Now you've got me on a
Go
roll.
ahead.
I like also, we're talking about a little bit about languages. I love the linguistic diversity, and that's part because I'm an applied linguist and I enjoy languages. I enjoy learning languages. I enjoy teaching language. So San Francisco has, oh my goodness, I can't think off the top of my head how many different languages are spoken in the city, but it's a
Yep.
lot. But I
Right.
do know there are maybe four official languages. So you have um, Chinese, Spanish, Tagalog, and Russian, in addition
Okay.
to English, of course,
Yep.
are the most commonly spoken languages. And
Yes.
now Vietnamese has last week been voted a official language of one of the official languages of San Francisco because the number of people immigrating from Vietnam has increased.
Yep.
So once it goes above a particular threshold, then they add it to, for example, um, public transportation signage is in multiple
Yes.
languages. They'll do announcements in different languages.
Yes.
So we are linguistically a very vibrant city in that regard. And of course, there are many other languages as well that you'll hear. And of course, we have many tourists coming to San Francisco. In
Right.
fact, across the street from my house is an old hotel built in 1906 after
Wow.
the famous earthquake. And we have a lot of French, German, and Italian tourists coming to that hotel. So you hear those languages right on my own block, which makes it very special.
Very interesting.
Maybe one last thing I would say, and we kind of began with this a little bit, is San Francisco is a very queer-friendly city.
Yes.
There are a lot of LGBTQ people,
Right.
including myself, in San Francisco, and so it's very accepting, and it has been very accepting of gay people, queer
Yes.
people. It's part of the identity of the city, and so I feel very safe in the city and feel very accepted, and that's very important.
So I guess, we can say that in terms of LGBTQ rights, San Francisco is like one of the pioneer cities.
Indeed,
Yep.
indeed. And you mentioned Harvey Milk.
Yep.
If people come to San Francisco, they can go to Harvey Milk Plaza, which is
Mhm.
in the Castro, which is a very small plaza.
Right.
But you can also see his camera store, which is now it's kind of like they sell gift shops type stuff, things, San Francisco
Yep.
stuff. But at least you can see it, right? And his presence is still very much. And if people fly here internationally, I think our known, I'm not sure if it's the international terminal or Terminal 1 at the airport is
Yes.
named after Harvey Milk. So
Oh,
yes, he has
wow.
had. Yes, I know. He has had huge impact in the
Right.
identity of.
Great.
Mhm.
I think like only one shortcoming that there's only one shortcoming I can think of when there are so many languages, and that
Yes.
is if you understand all the languages and you're in the bus and then they keep on saying the same thing and you understand all of the languages, then I think that can be quite annoying. I guess by the third language.
Right. It could be. It could
Right.
be. But then you need to think back, wow, you really are multilingual, right? When you really are a polyglot. And in
Yep.
that case, maybe you can just put in your earbuds and listen to something else or learn a new language. I don't know. So at San Francisco State, we have an MA TESOL program,
Okay.
and we are the oldest MA TESOL program in the United States. In fact, this year we celebrate our 60th anniversary.
Hmm.
We'll be having different events around that. But in our program, we work with a lot of people who either have some teaching experience or are new to teaching, but who
Okay.
are really keen on becoming English language teachers. Students study things like second language acquisition. So, how do people as adults learn another language? What does the scholarship say about that? And how does that knowledge help translate to pedagogy? What
Yes.
things can we do in the classroom based on what we know from the scholarship? We also have courses in sociolinguistics and pragmatics. So that's basically how language is used in context.
Yes.
And then we also look at different variations of English. For example, we would talk about no bullying or no bully in the
Yeah.
sociolinguistics context. We also offer courses in the teaching of reading and writing, speaking and listening, as well as curriculum and assessment. So students who really want to be language teachers get a really robust education.
Right.
Also in our program, we are in a department where students are also taking classes with linguistic students or students who are getting their master's in composition or in the teaching of writing. So
Okay.
you get a lot of students with a lot of different interests that really complement each other's education quite well.
Yes.
So it's great. And that's, you'll have students from the US, you'll also have students from around the world. Because TESOL as a field attracts people from all over the world. And that's really fun because then you get to meet and make friends from all over the planet, right?
Yes.
And then of course we do have an ESL program. It's also one of the oldest ESL programs in the United States, and that's called the American Language Institute.
Okay.
And a lot of our students who are studying to be English language teachers do their practicum or their practice teaching in the ALI, right? And that ALI program is very academically focused. So if students are interested, for example, in coming to the United States to study, one piece of advice I might give them is, what will you be doing with English? Do you want to use English for academic purposes, or do you just want more conversational tourist English? If you want the former, that is, if you want things that are more academically oriented, then I would recommend studying at in an ESL program, for example, within a university or at a university or college like San Francisco State, because then you're going to get an academic curriculum that then helps prepare you to apply to an undergraduate or graduate program and makes the process a little bit easier. So you know you're getting the vocabulary and the particular grammatical structures that are more commonly occurring in academic writing or speaking, and that will be very helpful as well.
And I think it enhances what you have learned. So yeah, thank you again for allowing us to interview you. Is it okay for me to leave your email?
Use my San Francisco State address, rcoles sfsu. That's the best one to use.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome very much. And so we'll see you in August.
Yes.
Today, we're going to talk about Alcatraz. My special guest is going to talk about this very, very special place.
So it used to be a prison, right?
That was the most notorious and the most difficult to escape from prison in America for decades. There are stories about people who were able to try to escape from there, but they were swept out into the ocean.
Oh, seriously?
And there's also sharks in the water. So
seriously?
They were potentially eaten by sharks.
Okay.
But from probably the 1930s to the 1960s, the most notorious and dangerous people in America were locked up in that prison, which is just about a mile offshore of one of the most metropolitan areas.
Yeah, so I don't see it as a place that's that far. It's swimmable.
Where are we going next? Stay tuned as we once again travel the world, learn about the culture of another country, and go around the world on 8 plates.